Today, we're starting a 5-part series on taking your novel from that spark that made you want to write all the way to the end. Today, with me, I have my brother, Glenn. He's one of my favorite writing buddies and sounding boards. So it only seemed appropriate to bring him along for the 2-part of how to plot a book. This is going to be parts 1 and 2 of this 5-part series. Whether you're a plotter or a pantser, there are some good tricks and tips for you in the plotting videos.
So stay tuned.
While I've always been inclined to have an outline, my many years of writing have turned me from a loose outliner to a very heavy outliner. So there's no wrong or right way to plan your book. So pantsing is fine and plotting is fine. These are my tips and tricks. So take what you like, leave what you don't. And if you are a pantser, I do suggest that you use steps 1 through 3. It'll really help you out in the developmental editing stage, which will be in part 3.
Aside from step 1, feel free to fill out the information in phase 1 in any order. Step 1 is really kind of the guidepost of everything else that follows. The rest, you just want to get done before you move on.
And we are going to have a free PDF in the free tier of our Patreon. We'll leave a link in the description. So I've broken plotting up into 3 phases. Right now, let's cover phase 1. Step 1 in phase 1 will be the general sense of the story. This is going to be the general spark of the story idea that you had, whether it was just a concept, a character arc, a really cool dream you had. You're just going to write this down, gets it out of your mind and onto paper. And of course, it's subject to change as you plot.
So part 2, you're going to want to figure out where the story begins and where the story ends. These 2 features are going to be your biggest guiding posts. Once you know where it begins and where it ends, you know about what needs to happen to get where you want to be.
The importance of these guideposts is especially when it comes to character development, if you know how a character starts and you know how you want them to end, you got to figure out what events in their life are going to get them to the new version of them. People don't change without something happening to them. And so if you know what kind of change you want them to undergo, you can have a better idea of the events of the story that need to happen for the character to go in the direction you want them to.
Let them suffer.
Let them suffer. And even if you're a pantser, I do recommend that you have this part figured out because it'll help you from wandering too far off. So if you're like me and you don't want to do a lot of work in the developmental editing stage, having this as your guidepost will keep you from doing extensive edit. And step 3, I also recommend that pantsers, you write this down. And then after step 3, just see if you like anything else I have here.
And speaking of, step 3, you want to know what your villain wants. So while everyone loves a proactive hero, the villain, or whatever the general threat of your story is going to more often than not be the real deciding factor of the problems and the issues and what your hero has to overcome. If you don't know what they're up to or what influence they've had, you're not giving your hero anything to work with, anything to overcome and show just how good of a hero they are. And if you come into roadblocks in your writing, if you know what your villain is up to and where they're being proactive, you keep generating new content and new ideas, and you have a much harder time running out of things for the hero to do and solve.
Step 4, you want to have an idea if this is going to be a standalone book or part of a series. So if you are going trad publishing, you do want to write your first book, even if it's part of a series, where it could be standalone. But if you're indie, you can have a lot more freedom with leaving plot threads open for more books. However, even if you are going trad, I find that the best series are written intentionally as a series from the beginning because there's going to be more little nuggets of, oh, there's more to come. And that makes it a lot more exciting for the series overall.
Plus, when it comes to series, you tend to want an overarching story for the series as a whole, not just each individual book. Each book, you want to have a satisfying conclusion, maybe, Empire Strikes Back style, like, oh, this left so much open and I just need more. But, you still want each one to stand on its own, and then the whole series. It feels bad when you can tell that a series has been opened up to tell more stories rather than this is what was always meant to be.
Step 5, your genre and your target age group.
So your genre and age group are pretty straightforward issues. If you're writing sci-fi, fantasy, contemporary, or if you're writing for middle reader adults, you're going to want to know this going in because it's going to help dictate how you write, what you write, the themes you can really explore, and how deep you can go.
And that's why a lot of new writers don't quite realize the difference between the age groups. It's more than just the age of your protagonist. It is themes as well. And then there's certain conventions of things that YA readers expect. Typically, you're going to expect a romance. I mean, obviously not 100% of the time, but most YA, they want a romance subplot. Middle grade is going to tackle more like friendship themes. And of course, when you get into adult, you can get more nuanced and more complex concepts and themes. And then, of course, there's just material that is inappropriate for younger readers that should never show up in their books. Now, here's the fun part, probably the part that most of us writers enjoys, the characters. Here in step 6, you're going to write down the characters that you know you're going to have. And as you're plotting, you're going to continue this list.
So at this stage, you're going to want to list their names, roles, and also, more importantly, what their character arcs are. If you know why this character exists and what you want them to achieve or get out of them, it's going to help fill out your plot and also establish that, yeah, this character does have a justified existence.
Now, it is okay if some of the characters don't have character arcs. Not everyone is going to, but your main character and your big side characters should have some sort of character arc. Usually, our main character is going to have the most dramatic one, but people love side characters with a good arc. And it could be something small and it could be something bigger, but this is part to write that down because, like we said at the beginning, if you know how you want them to change, those events need to happen to the characters and the side characters as well. And of course, just like any other part of this plotting, it is subject to change. Just because you wrote it down doesn't mean it has to happen. You can go back and change it as necessary.
And step 7, this is where we get into plotting. Now, don't worry, we're not going hard in the paint on this yet. We're not going all in. This is just your beginning, your end, your character arcs, and other scenes you've thought of at this point. We're not going and saying, fill it all out. This is just clear out your brain, clear out the cobwebs, and make sure you have listed everything you know ahead of time.
So this is a spot where you'd put, oh, I have a really cool battle idea. I want to jot that down. I have a very nice romance scene idea. You're going to put that in. Anything that you have thought of that you're like, oh, this would be exciting in the story, put that in. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make it to the end, but it'll help you kind of figure out where you want to go. Now, the next step, you either love this step or you hate this step. Step 8 is setting.
I personally love this set.
We love world building. So now, of course, setting is going to look different depending on the genre you're writing and how in depth you're going with world building. So if you're writing a urban fantasy or something more contemporary that's set on Earth, your world building is not going to have to be as extensive than if you are creating your own universe. Then you're going to have a lot of world building. So first step is going to be a magic system. If that applies to your genre, you're going to want to figure out the magic system. Is it a hard magic system? Is it a soft magic system? And what are the rules you have planned out for it? Even soft magic systems should have some sort of rule to it.
It's also worth making sure you know what the characters in universe understand about the magic system versus the realities of it.
We'll get to that too later. But here, definitely put.
That's the truth of the world, I guess.
Yeah, it is.
That.
But we'll get into that. But yeah, you could make notes here as well of what do they believe and what do you as the author know is the truth of how it all works.
Next up, following up on the magic system, you're going to want to know your tech levels. This is important all the way from your contemporary of today to stories set in the past where you need to know, hey, what were they actually using? What's going to, if I include, stand out and not necessarily discredit the story, but definitely sit as an anomaly or show a lack of studying, all the way up to, hey, for a future of sci-fi, what do I want them to be capable of? Tech level is going to really determine a lot of what is possible, just like a magic system would, but in a more grounded, conventional manner.
Next is the political system. So
Mhm.
what are the politics like in your story? If you're writing more of a historical context, you're going to have to do research. If you're creating your own, especially in the speculative fiction genres, have fun with it. Don't always necessarily, while everyone loves a good monarchy setup, there's many forms of political government, and you're going to want to figure out how it works and the intricacies of it. And even if you are going with a monarchy, do they have who are their advisors? Do they have a council? So here's just a good idea for setup for the politics. Now, obviously, if politics are going to play a big part in your story, you're going to want to be more detailed here. And if you're not really going to touch on politics, you still want to have an idea of how everything's ran, but you don't need to get into the nitty gritties.
Now, while politics will have a lot of influence and a lot of setups coming out of culture, culture is the next step that we want to talk about. Now, this really gets into the general vibe of society and their beliefs and their personal systems.
So have fun with your cultures. Research other cultures and take what you like from different cultures and integrate them. Especially if you're writing fantasy or sci-fi, you don't have to wholesale lift a culture and reuse it. That's the fun of fantasy is that you're like, oh, I want to take these aspects and mix them together. And you can have really rich settings by really diving into cultures. And on the subject of cultures, you have more of a macro culture and then your micro culture.
Hmm.
So, good examples here in the United States, we have kind of a macro culture, but every state that you go into and then every town that you go to has their own individual culture. So, you can think about that too while building your story.
Really consider how the people live and why they live the way they do. I mean, I can't remember which country it is, but roll wheel of cheese down a hill and chase it. Sometimes culture is silly.
Yeah,
Some
you can have fun. It doesn't always have to be serious. Next will be the general feel of places. So, anywhere in your story that you're going to have the characters go to, you want to have a kind of a general vibe. Is it going to be whimsical and magical, or is it gritty and dark and gross? To have fun with the variety of the places that you're going. And this will help build the vibe of your story as well.
and if you're figuring out cultures, this will also tie nicely into figuring out the vibe of places. One will influence the other. Now, the next thing is going to play well off of culture, politics, and vibe is figuring out who has power and why do they have power. Now, real life history, a lot of monarchies, it was bloodlines and quote unquote divine right to rule. Fantasy stories, it could be a magic tree blooms a flower for them, and oh, okay, so that's the person that's going to be in charge. There are so many reasons from soft powers, hard powers, just cultural expectations. There's so many ways you can do it.
And remember that power doesn't have to be legitimate power too. This could easily be your gang and organization bosses. It could be bandit groups. So who has power? Why? And at what different levels, both legal and illegal?
I mean, if you're writing a gritty noir, the kingpin of the city probably holds more power than the governor does.
So next, this one's really specific to fantasy or maybe sci-fantasy, a pantheon and a creation story if you need one. Now, whether or not anyone in the world actually talks about the creation story or the pantheon or how big of a part they play, you still, as the author, want to have that idea because it will affect cultures in the world. And as you see everything in this setting step, you'll be going back and forth, updating things as you realize more information about your world because they all really play a part together because nothing exists in isolation.
While not always needed, if you're going to write epic fantasy, I kind of recommend you figure this part out at that point because you're going to be writing an extensive and large story, and readers tend to want to know why does this world even exist to begin with. And this step will lead into what we call the truth of the world. This is where you want to know what is the reality of the world they're in. What's the true history? What's the as alluded to earlier, what's the deeper truths of the magic system, or maybe even hey, the family lies that the character's grown up learning in a more contemporary story, what really happened on May 5th, 2014.
Which then leads into one of my favorite parts about storytelling is the what do people believe about the world? So the truth of the world and what general population and people believe should never really match 100%. This is the best way to get plot twists, to get some conflict because people think of history in two different ways. And it's a great way to create just those plot twists. One really good example is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. The truth of the world and how the world actually is are very different, and it makes for a great plot twist at the end of the story.
I assure you, May 5th, 2014, Grandma went rollerblading and came home and found Grandpa dead. I assure you, that is the truth. Now, the next step is probably a little more controversial and a lot less universal, but we do recommend having a map of your setting. Now, typically we would just kind of refer to this as the map of the world, but the world should embody wherever the story is taking place. In some stories, that might be a city, a house, a country, whole planet, or maybe even multiple planets. At large scales like that, you might get a lot less bang for your buck, but it's generally good to know what your map looks like so you know where things are and what you're working with.
Right. And so you don't have to go hire anybody to make your map. This doesn't have to be a beautiful map. For you as the author, this is just a quick scribble down. I know where everything is in relation to each other. And leading into the next step, the relative distances between these places. So don't worry, you don't need to break out how many kilometers or miles apart places are. But you do want to have a note about how long does it take to get to places by different modes of travel. This will help you stay consistent in your writing. So, whereas in one scene, maybe it takes an hour to get from the house to the hideout by foot, and then later, somehow they got there in 20 minutes by foot. It just helps you with your consistencies.
And not even just consistency. Sometimes it'll also help you dictate and decide what sort of complications or ideas are even feasible and possible. If your plucky protagonist threw a crazy party that they need to clean up and it's going to take them 2 hours to do, but their mom is coming home and then she only needs an hour to do so, well, now you got a choice. Can they get it clean? Or does something have to happen to the mom that delays her so they can't succeed?
And that's everything that's covered in setting. Now, remember, you can do all of this plotting in any order, aside from maybe like the first three. Well, yeah, first three, really. You want to get those, an idea for them, and then do the rest. And then you're going to go back and keep changing things until you're like, this seems pretty solid. I'm happy with what I have, with it in mind that it'll change when you get to phase two. But this is going to be a really good jumping board for you.
And don't be afraid to jump back to previous steps even before you've finished all of them. If you've got scenes you won't know you want, definitely get those out of your head before they're lost.
Right. Or alternatively, sometimes if you don't get the ideas out of your head, you can't think of new ones.
That
So
too.
write it so you can get make space for some new ideas. And once again, we're going to have the free PDF of this whole checklist for plotting on the free tier of our Patreon. So feel free to go over there and grab it. That's the end of phase one of plotting. In our next video, we're going to cover phase two and three, which is the rest of plotting.
So, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to hear more from us.